Good Wednesday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock in time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Warren Sharp Football, on what he sees in Shedeur Sanders after his rookie season.
Shedeur Sanders, as a rookie, playing with these weapons, playing with this team, you're not going to get a lot and say, oh my God, we got to trash this kid. There's nothing he could do moving forward to be any bit better. He can't possibly be a franchise caliber quarterback because of what we saw last year. I'm not necessarily going to say that, but what I am going to share is that out of 45 qualifying quarterbacks, he ranked 45th in completion rate, 43rd in EPA per dropback. And I could go through all these other statistics that I have. Touchdown interception ratio, which ranked 44th out of 45. He caused 29% of his own pressures, which was 44th out of 45 quarterbacks. We know quarterbacks do factor into the pressures that they bring upon themselves. He allowed, with his offensive line playing a role here too, an NFL high 51% pressure rate. So obviously that was the worst in the NFL. But I just don't, what I saw on film, what I saw on tape, I just did not think that Shedeur Sanders could be a franchise caliber quarterback moving forward.
We'll see. They have more playmakers. It's a different offensive line, and it's a different head coach and a different offense. So we'll see. Deshaun Watson is working out in Cleveland in the offseason, getting ready for training camp. Browns beat reporter Daryl Ryder reacts to that news.
He believes he needs to do work in order to get out ahead of Shedeur Sanders. That's what this tells me more than anything. He knows he's got to put in the work. He can't just show up and beat Shedeur. And so I think there's a serious nature to this that I think he's starting to take this with, and I do respect it. I don't think it's going to matter in the long run, and I don't think he's going to win the job in the long run, but I do like that.
I think that he realizes he's not the same player he used to be.
Yes.
And so he has to, again, no one has ever questioned his work ethic or putting in the work, all those type of things when it comes to Deshaun Watson.
Right.
All right.
Right.
The easy thing, he could have easily pocketed the 230, and that's that, right? So I will give him his credit in that regard. The workout season videos, I just don't care. I really do not care what these guys are doing as far as posting their workouts on social media. I do care that they're working out because that, by the way, that's what he should be doing. So why should I be sitting here praising a guy for doing what he's supposed to be doing or what he should be doing in his free time?
Plenty of Browns talk coming up in a few minutes with Jeff Lloyd as well as Fred Greetham. Let's turn our attention to the Guardians. Opening up a 3-game series in Minnesota against the Twins, trying to snap a 2-game losing streak. A second inning, scoreless game. Rhys Hoskins at the plate, and Rhys Hoskins gives the Guardians a 1-0 lead, his 8th home run of the year, a solo shot. Second inning, game tied at 1. Brooks Lee, RBI single right up the middle to make it 2-1, Twins with the lead. In the 7th, still 2-1, and Cody Clemens hits one, and that one's all kinds of trouble. Goes as an RBI triple to give the Twins a 3-1 lead, and that is the final. The Twins beat the Guardians by a score of 3-1. Guardians have now lost 3 straight. They're still a game behind the White Sox in the AL Central. Game 2 of the series tonight. Slade Ciccone scheduled to take the mound for the Guardians against Connor Prelip for the Twins. Let's turn our attention to the Cavaliers. Still plenty going on relative to the Cavs and the chase of LeBron. ESPN's national NBA analyst Brian Windhorst on his read of the LeBron James free agency decision.
People in the league are certainly, I think that it's pointing towards Cleveland, but they are operating off vibes. And if you ask me, are the vibes pointing towards Cleveland? Yeah, the vibes are pointing towards Cleveland, but it's just vibes. And I wish I could sit here and tell you, my sources tell me, Chris, that at 6:14 p.m. on Wednesday, here's the thing.
Right.
In 2010, he announced on live television. In 2014, he announced on the internet. I mean, it was basically through a magazine, but it's essentially in an internet article. Yeah. In 2018, it was a press release. Now he gets to pick the medium. So we'll see.
And again, that's LeBron James. He's been golfing in Akron, for what that's worth. Jason Lloyd of The Athletic, why he believes Cavs fans are frustrated with the Cavaliers getting knocked out in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Because LeBron spoiled everyone. And he used to say that when he was here. When he would get mad at me, he would say, I'd say, because I'd spoil you, that's why. Like, we'd fight about something, he'd say, it's because I spoil you. And he said that in 2010, right before he left. He said, I spoil y'all. And I do think that there's some merit to that. You know, we're coming off the 10-year celebration of the championship, and all the stories and all the feel-good stories of the parade and coming back from 3-1 and everything. And everybody saw all the pictures and all the videos of those guys hanging out together. And everybody relived all of that, while at the same time the Cavs were getting swept from the conference finals. Now I look at that and say, hey, they made it to the conference finals. That's a step in the right direction. Other people look at that and say, but they got swept and they played like crap. That doesn't count. So I think that they're sort of swimming up the current against the previous era. And because the previous era won a championship, that's what they are being measured against.
We will have Cavs talk later in the show with Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. Time for us to take a quick time out. Other side of the break, Jeff Lloyd from the Orange and Brown Report. Browns 3D on the Orange and Brown Report is up first on Sports4CLE. We're talking Browns. Stay with us.
You got so much to do. It's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day. 'Cause it's fun all over the state. So come on. Great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
Browns are up first on Sports4CLE. Warren Sharp Football, talking about what he thinks Todd Monken and the Browns will do in Monken's first season.
He's walking into a tough situation here, in my opinion. If you look at the team for the Baltimore Ravens last year, which is kind of like his last opportunity to show what he is capable of. Obviously, when he had Lamar Jackson year one and they made some changes to the offense, that offense had a lot of success, got back on track. But when we're looking at where he was able to take that team, I mean, the run game was not very good last season, barring a few explosive runs from Derrick Henry. They were terrible in short yardage situations. They had issues with the offensive line. It had some injuries on the interior offensive line. You could try to blame that. Lamar Jackson was not able to be kept healthy. I don't know how much of he showed up on the injury report. I want to say like every single game from like week 2 onward, week 3 onward. So I don't know how much of that was like the riff with the head coach versus him being not 100%. But I just think that there are some aspects to Monken from a strategic perspective that are solid, but I don't know if it's going to pair very well with the decline in quarterback play that he is going to get here.
Let's welcome in Jeff Lloyd, host of Browns 3D on the Orange and Brown Report. Jeff, your thoughts just on Monken? I didn't love the Monken hire when they made it. I understood it. The more I've seen the way he's run things, the more I like the hire.
I think if you're going for like a whole new genre, whole new look, maybe the previous regime, things got stale, things were being, continuously done the same way, even though they were, no longer having the success that they had in times in 20 or 23. Certainly, clearly, a breath of fresh air was certainly needed. I think for Monken himself, I mean, there's several, factors here. And, it's whether or not everything can fuse together. Certainly, and in these pieces you're talking about and these clips you're sharing with Warren Sharp, who's fantastic. I don't disagree, obviously, with, some of the statistical analysis that he's bringing up in regards to Shedeur Sanders. Creating his own pressure was certainly something that, got him into trouble in college. And for a lot of people, who didn't want to truly see it or believe it, which that's what kind of led to him being a 5th round pick. So now you're going to have what should be an improved offensive line, obviously. We think the receiving core should be improved. We're certainly hoping, that, Quinshon Judkins is around more in 2026 than he was in 2025 due to injury and, obviously what went on early in the season. But, we can say, oh, the offensive line should be better. Oh, the receiving core should be better. Oh, the running game should be better. Also, which should lead to better quarterback play. But, in the world of what ifs, we all, where that line usually leads to, the retort from the cynic in the room, so to speak. But for Monken, this is about, getting his name out there and, saying, look, I've been regarded as a really good offensive mind for a really long time. Nobody really looked to me to maybe be the guy who would be truly, running a job at this level. And so I think for Monken, it's going to be a tough camp. I really think he is going to push hard. And it's going to be more so for the fact of, I'm going to weed out those who can't make it, and we're going to run with those that I believe can.
The other thing I would say about Monken that I like, he's been here. He knows some of the he knows some of the traps and holes, if you will, to avoid behind closed doors.
Or in front of a microphone as well for pressers. You know what I'm saying? There's always been, and we know how it goes here, obviously. If the team's successful, everybody loves the head coach. When the team isn't successful, nobody wants to hear, we got to look back at that, or we got to get better. Nobody wants to hear it anymore. You know what I'm saying? You don't need to say it to us. Obviously, you need to show us on the field that the product is getting better. But, where he's, coming from a program like University of Georgia in the past, obviously, right after that, the Baltimore Ravens, certainly there's been many other stops for Todd Monken along the way. I think that, he should have the perfect track record that regardless of what team fan base he gets to, he should have enough experience and being in several areas, college football, pro football, where, he should know exactly how to handle himself. It was certainly time for Todd Monken. It was either this job or maybe he was never going to just get that opportunity. So, for him, I think there's a lot of, I want to show people just what I can do with a franchise. And most of the times that starts with a franchise, that's in a very low place. It's very rare that we're going to get a first-time head coach in the NFL with a team that's got a lot of success.
How much more explosive should this team be? Todd Monken's offense, receiving core, and, the offensive line remade.
I think the recipe is there. Of course, we're talking a lot about a lot of youth here. You know what I'm saying? And to say, hey, it's one thing to say, can this rookie wide receiver step up? It's a whole other thing to say, can both these rookie wide receivers step up? The Browns last year were in a weird situation. There were three guys who I thought were about to make a huge jump for them. DeJuan Jones, Tillman, Isaiah McGuire. Every one of them had the worst year of their career to this point for the Cleveland Browns. So it's going to be for these younger guys. And, you never want to say in an opportunity, hey, you're playing for yourself. But, this is, kind of where it's at for these guys. Because, look, I don't think there's many seats safe as far as a, 26 to 27 game of musical chairs, as far as who is going to be a Cleveland Brown in 26 and guarantee who's going to be there in 27. There is all the opportunity in the world here, especially with Myles Garrett gone now, for guys to go out there and make their name. When the Browns were struggling, nobody got talked about except for Myles Garrett because he was just an all-world phenomenal talent. But for the Browns, whatever this team may be this year, there's the opportunity for some guys to make maybe a little bit, not just a name for themselves with the Cleveland Browns, but maybe, an opportunity to get some national notoriety, as part of being hopefully, one or two or three or four or five, 6 or 7 pieces of what could ultimately finally be, the Cleveland Browns stabilizing things and at least becoming an AFC North contender for maybe the first 10 weeks of every season.
All right, former NFL defensive back Tyvis Powell on how good he thinks the Browns can be this season.
I see this team winning 7 to 8 games. I know a lot of people say that's crazy talk, but to me, you win the offseason by what you did with the roster, some of the moves that you made. Everybody tells you had the best draft. A lot of people respect Todd Monken's play calling. I know the Myles Garrett thing kind of puts a wrinkle on things, but you get another player back in return. And I just think that the whole message from a team standpoint, maybe not the front office, but from a coaching and a player standpoint, is to win. We want to win. We want to change the culture. We want a winning culture here, right? Now, you hear that all the time, but I don't know. The players say that things is different. You hear them talk, and they seem like they're enjoying what they're doing again, right? And I think that counts for something. And then I think that if you parlay that with, quote unquote, the easiest schedule in the NFL, because I put it in quotes because obviously things is year to year. Teams figure things out all the time. So you can't really put a lot of stock in it's going to be the easiest because who knows, a team's going to come out of nowhere. So if you parlay all of that together, to me, that should be able to get you more wins.
Yeah, I get it. How should Todd Monken be judged? What do we judge as a successful season? At the end of the year, if this happens, what do we say? Okay, Browns are in a pretty good spot.
I think it's going to come down to, and if you want to just pick one thing, and I don't know if that's necessarily fair, it's not going to be probably the quarterback position, because I think everybody believes the quarterback for 2027 is most likely, lining up for a year on a collegiate campus this year. I think it's going to be, what do Concepcion and Boston look like? Is Quinshawn Judkins showing you that he's a 1,000-yard back? Obviously, Harold Fannin, I don't believe it was, a rookie year miracle. I think he's going to be one of the more consistent, maybe, but a little bit undersized receiving tight ends. You want to see that all that's clicking. You know what I'm saying? That Concepcion and Boston are good players. You certainly want to see that Fano shows that he is going to be, a guy, a dude, a linchpin on that offensive line. Hopefully somebody that can be around for maybe a decade. You want to see these young skill players hopefully get better. It doesn't necessarily, mean that, Shedeur Sanders is going to show so well that it'll change maybe what the thoughts are for the Browns in the offseason. But, with better, hopefully, an offensive mind in there this year, you should expect those things, those young wide receivers, Fannin, Judkins, maybe even Sampson as well, to show you that maybe all that's truly missing is finally, and we'll say it, for about the 5,000th time with the Cleveland Browns, is all you're missing is maybe the franchise quarterback.
Jeff Lloyd, host of Browns 3D on the Orange and Brown Report, and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd, host of Browns 3D on the Orange and Brown Report. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I just happened to be reading an article that said, which player would you Browns fans like to see come back? Without a doubt, Baker Mayfield. He's going to become a free agent. Let me say it again. Baker Mayfield. He's tough. He moves forward, and he's the guy we should bring back. Forget everybody else. Bring back Baker Mayfield. Goodbye.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Given the quarterback play, Jeff, that we've seen since Mayfield left, I understand that thought. But Tampa's taken a wait-and-see approach with him. They're not running out to sign him to a big contract. They're miles apart relative to money, and he's been about a 500 quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about a division like the NFC South, obviously, you don't have to be a world beater, of course. Also, but to Baker's credit and to give him respect in this, there was a time last year, I would say when he was week 7, week 8, that a lot of people were saying, you know what, Baker Mayfield may be actually a legitimate MVP candidate right now. It would be interesting because I think, obviously Baker has certainly matured, obviously now a father. I think finding, some strung along yearly success in Tampa Bay, has certainly probably, maybe eased, because Baker, the one thing that used to get people against Baker, which I kind of never understood, was, Baker always felt like, he felt like he had to prove it to everybody. And I think with some consistency these last few years in Tampa Bay, I think that's kind of gone away. Like he doesn't carry that chip anymore. That being said, some of the issues he had here in Cleveland and maybe some of the people that he, clashed with here in Cleveland are still here and still on the team, so to speak. So, I don't know necessarily that'd be a reunion that would ever happen. But, I think for a lot of Cleveland Browns fans, when the breakup first happened with Baker Mayfield and, a lot of had their issues and maybe were kind of happy that it did get moved on. I certainly think there's a lot that say, you know what, maybe Baker wasn't 100% completely in the wrong. And then, how he got replaced, who he was replaced by, I think it certainly gave maybe a little bit more of a likable rating to Baker Mayfield that maybe those who were so quick to write him off were like, well, when I meant anybody, I didn't mean that guy.
All right. Warren Sharp football again. Outlook for Deshaun Watson in 2026.
I was seeing that there's better connection with Watson than there was with Sanders as it relates to Monken. And Monken is not going to want to come in here and start a quarterback who is, in his opinion, the second best quarterback on the roster. He's going to want to come in here and start the best quarterback on the roster with whatever he's got. And so that very well might be Deshaun Watson. But I've got big time questions about Deshaun Watson as well and what he's going to be able to do for this offense and, what he was doing when he was last playing, which was not very good. In 7 seasons since 2019, he has never won more than 5 games in any season. His rank among 59 qualifying quarterbacks over the last 5 years is 59th in EPA per play, 59th in sacks taken per pressure, the same exact bugaboo that is bothering Shedeur Sanders to a degree. That's Deshaun Watson. 56th in success rate and in interception plus sack rate, also 56th, and 52nd in yards per attempt, 52nd in completion rate.
And Jeff, he hasn't been able to stay healthy, and when he's been healthy, he hasn't been able to play. The one thing is, this is Todd Monken's first big decision. He's got to play the guy who looks the best.
I agree, but I don't know what playing Deshaun Watson really does for anybody here. There is, okay, so say he plays well. He's not going to be here in 27. I'm sure Deshaun Watson is eager to move on from his time in Cleveland, as most everybody here in Cleveland and Browns fans all over the world are ready to move on from Deshaun as well. You listen to Warren Sharp babble off those numbers, which nobody looks good in that scenario. Shedeur doesn't look good when those numbers are rattled off. Obviously, Deshaun Watson doesn't look that good as well. The thing with Watson, with Shedeur, at least you can say, well, it was a rookie year on a terrible football team, with not much going on the offensive line or not much going on the skill positions. So at least for Shedeur, because, some of that you're talking about with, Deshaun was his time in Houston, obviously. So, again, I guess if he's the best, he's going to get out there. But I will be honest with you, if it's me and I'm Monken, whatever 26 becomes, I want it to become because of Shedeur Sanders and maybe even Green, if that's the case we're really going to go. I wouldn't want to get that heavily invested if I'm Todd Monken with Deshaun Watson, knowing that, it's not going to lead to anything but basically just trying to figure this all out again next offseason. So why not at least, and even if Shedeur's good enough to be a 2, okay. That's at least something, because Deshaun, who knows where he even goes from here? Because it would take a lot of humility on his part for Deshaun Watson of what's going to be next in the NFL for him. Not even if he has to do it, obviously, with the money he's made here in Cleveland. But if it's me and I'm rooting for any progress in 2026, I want it to be with guys who are under the age of 25, not the guy who's, leaving a very, very bad taste in, basically all of Cleveland Browns fandom's mouth.
So we did find out insurance will give the Browns some salary cap relief relative to Watson's contract. The exact number has not been made public. Educated guesses are it's in the neighborhood of $26 million total. How important is that?
Well, I mean, I don't think at this point it really. If you follow people who do this, Jack Duffin at the OBR is fantastic as far as this type of stuff. You saw this coming, and you kind of read up on this, and you kind of aware what was coming. It's not going to make Cleveland look any better. It is still going to go down as one of the worst transactions, if not the worst transaction in all of professional sports. There's no way around it. And there'll be cap room next year. There'll be cap room after. Again, that's another thing Browns fans are sick of hearing about. They really, really are. They just want a successful product. If it was 53 guys who were 3 years in the league and younger, they'd be ecstatic. And the question with cap space is, do you use it wisely? Because, $230 million certainly was not used wisely. So to hear, because of injuries, we're getting some of that back. And nobody really, I think, even remotely cares about that. It's never going to take away the black eye of this move. But it's good to know that, hey, if this team does show something in these next couple of years, maybe there's guys, and agents more specifically, not automatically just turning a blind eye to possibility of their clients signing with the Cleveland Browns.
Jeff, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jeff.
All the best to everybody. Camp's coming soon. Enjoy your summer.
All right, Jeff Lloyd, make sure you check him out. He is the host of Browns 3D on the Orange and Brown Report. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Fred Greetham straight ahead. We're still talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
You got so much to do. It's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day. 'Cause it's fun all over the state. So come on. Great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I'm looking forward to a Todd Monken creative offense that's going to remind Browns fans why they used to like watching football so much. So I was just wondering, who do you think is going to catch more touchdown passes this year? Tavon Green or DeWand Jones?
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Fred, I don't think they're going to mess with Tavon Green in that form or fashion. I think he may have a running touchdown or two, but I don't think they're going to use him as a wide receiver, at least not yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot remains to be seen what happens in training camp and really the preseason games. If he doesn't, as I mentioned before, I kind of expect him to explode and be the talk of preseason because in the games, I think, as you've all seen, the third, fourth string plays the majority of the second half. And you put a guy out there that can run a 4.3 40 at quarterback, I think he's going to make some eye-opening plays. And I don't know if, the Browns would be able to keep him on the practice squad. But then again, I don't know if you feel good enough about having him as your third quarterback if Watson and or Sanders get hurt. So I really think, in a perfect world, they would rather keep him on the practice squad. And if anything, they bring him up for games as they feel ready. But I think it would be his role down the road might be a gadget play, like, come in on 3rd down, 4th and 1, run the read option. Either he pitches it or runs it, that kind of thing. But I don't know how tricky they're going to get with him running, routes and that. It could be, but as far as I'm not, you got to have some talent. You got to have some things working well to go to those type of trick plays, because they don't work if nothing else works and you're trying to rely on trick plays. So we'll see. I expect him to be creative, but I think it'll be more with a bread and butter running game and, motion in the offense and stuff like that.
Yeah, I do think the offense will be much different. It won't be as plotting and systematic. I expect there will be more explosive plays. I guess I expect that from Todd Monken.
You got more explosive players potentially, with Fan in the 2nd year, Judkins healthy, and Concepcion in Boston, and you hope Jerry Jeudy, with the additional wide receivers, and Isaiah Bond, you have more weapons. Defense can only guard and cover so many guys, and if you have 3 really legitimate weapons, then you have your 4th and 5th option getting a matchup against maybe the 4th or 5th option on the defense. And I think that's some of the things that happened to the Browns defense last year is, you had Denzel Ward, and until they got Tyson Campbell, they were picking on the slot cornerback, and, Cameron Mitchell ultimately got waived because they were beating him like a drum. Miles Harden did a little better. But what I'm saying is if you have 3, 4, 5, the more options you have, it only makes sense. You have a better chance to be successful, because unless it's an elite defense, they usually only have so many elite defenders.
So Warren Sharp from Sharp Football, talking about what he sees in the Browns for 2026 and moving forward.
They say offense wins games, defense wins championships. Like, nobody would believe that, having watched the Cleveland Browns last season, because you had a championship caliber defense, but an offense so bad that it couldn't get out of its way, that defense was completely wasted. And so I think the thought process here is we lose a stud defensive player, but we couldn't win with him even if we had him. And so while it might sting to see him potentially have the chance to win a Super Bowl with the Rams, what we got back in return is going to set us up for something special in the future. And I think that they're actually building the right way here. This is probably potentially the first time that I could say that. The one question mark that I have is at head coach. I mean, I don't want to throw a cold bucket of water on you guys if you are massive Todd Monken fans, but I'm really just not sure how he is going to blend with the quarterbacks that you have right now and with the way that this team needs to win football games. But I think from a personnel perspective, I'm more optimistic this year in terms of the future of the Browns over the next coming seasons than I was entering last season.
Fred, what are your thoughts? From everything you've seen, Monken is one with a mobile quarterback. He's one with a stationary quarterback at Georgia, won a national championship when he was the OC. I'm interested to see how this offense works, given what we've seen the last couple of years on the offensive side of the ball. It just wasn't working with Kevin Stefanski, and I thought he was a good coach. His offense got bad.
I think that was the reason why they took the chance on bypassing Jim Schwartz and maybe derailing that defense, because they just felt the offensive side, as he mentioned, we've talked about that on here for a couple of years, is the offense, the quarterback play doesn't even have to be elite to have a winning record. It just had to be average because the defense. And the offensive play wasn't average. They scored 15 a game in 2024 and 16 a game in 2025. If you could just get up to the 22, 23 point a game, I know that's about a touchdown more or 6, 7 points more, you would have probably won 4 or 5 more games last year, and that would have put you in double digits. So I think that's the whole idea, is that the defense, yes, without Myles Garrett, might slip back, but not to the point to cost you games like not scoring points will, 15, 16 points. With all the emphasis on the offense, we'll see if it paid off. They completely overhauled the offense. There's two sides of the coin. Some people think they did a great job. Some people think they overpaid for some guys. They did overpay for some guys. But if those 7, 8 new offensive linemen can mesh and create holes for the running game with Judkins can make the offense look better with the additional playmakers, with Bond and Tillman, or not, Tillman's better, Boston and Concepcion. You just got to get, again, average quarterback play. Not to get to the playoffs and beyond, you got to have above average quarterback play. But I do think that if you can just find a way to be creative, to get in the end zone and score a couple, 2 more field goals or another touchdown a game, you put yourself in a position to win many more games than you did in the last 2 years.
All right, before we go to break, and I know you've been asked this a number of times, did the Browns have the best offseason in the NFL, in your opinion?
I didn't think so. They had a good offseason. It's still it sounds good on paper with the moves in free agency and the draft, but you never know till you see them. Once you saw Schlesinger and Judkins and those guys on the field, Fannin last year, you said, okay, they got a pretty good draft. We thought it was pretty good until you see Fano and Boston and Concepcion and Emmanuel McNeil Warren, you don't know exactly. And some of the like I said, the offensive linemen, I think, when you lose Myles Garrett, even if you get Jared Verse, who's close, or at least a Pro Bowler, I don't know if you can have the best off season. You got to look immediately to the Rams. They added Myles Garrett, and they added McDuffie, and they added another defensive back. They're going for it, and I just think it's hard to, argue when you had your best player is no longer here. For the future, you might be set up better, but right now, I don't know if they had the best offseason. They might add one of the top 5, certainly one of the top 10 off seasons, but I don't know if they had the best.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report, and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout, other side of the break. We'll talk a little bit more about Myles Garrett and Jared Verse, Sports4CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report, former NFL defensive back Tyvis Powell on the Browns quarterback competition.
Ideally, you would love to have it been solved by now. But that would mean that one guy's just completely blowing the other guy away. Like, it's not even close, and they would have been able to make that decision. But the fact that it's still going on, to me, I feel like it shows that it's two guys that's putting their best foot forward. There's something there from both guys, and I think at some point you do got to make that decision. I'm hoping after the joint practice against the Bills that they get it done, because that gives them, roughly 2, maybe 3 weeks, I believe, until the season starts. So you want to get that chemistry going with who the starter is, who guys should be listening to on the offense and stuff like that. But right now, if it's still that close, let them go. Let them go and go up against some other teams, get some game film in there. And then once you make that decision, you just can't look back.
Fred, this is Todd Monken's first big decision. It has to be pretty apparent to the team for him. He can't, if one of these guys outplays the other, he can't go the other way and say, this is our starting quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I agree there. I think that when you get to the joint practice, it happens to be on August 20th, 2 days before the second preseason game with the Bills. That would be, I would think, the time you need to do it. Then you would have 2 games in the preseason, and then you have till September 13th. So you'd have plenty of time to get it together. But I do think you have to name a starter. But then again, usually if you vote for captains, one of the quarterbacks usually gets voted as a captain, and you have to be committed to that. You don't want to have to pull that guy, after a game or two if he's the captain. So that being said, I think Todd Monken's going to make a decision, not on the long term, but what he thinks will give him the best chance to open the season with a win on the road in Jacksonville. They open in Jacksonville and then go to Tampa Bay. So they play 2 away games. And if he thinks Watson puts him in a better position to win those first 2 games, I think that's where he goes. Same thing if he thinks Sanders does. They're on the road, going to be very, very hot. So I just think that that's where his focus is, because he hasn't anything promised. He wants to get off to the quickest start he can, and you don't want to be 0-2 coming home, to play Carolina. And so that's what I think it'll come down to. But I do think that there has to be some separation, because if they're about the same, why wouldn't you go with Sanders? Because you have more of an upside potential with him, just playing 7 games as opposed to Watson kind of in the final, year of his contract.
All right, Jason Lloyd from The Athletic on the Myles Garrett trade and how much expectation is being placed on Jared Verse.
I liked the trade. I thought it was a great trade. I thought it was a year, not too late, but I thought they should have done it last year. I thought they should have traded him last year. So to get what they got for him and to be able to get a player of Verse's caliber plus picks, I thought it was a great trade. And, Myles last year did a terrific job against the run. Full credit to him. Not only did he break the sacks record, he also was much, much better against the run. Prior to last year, I'd have people tell me, all you got to do is run in the gap that he vacates, because he's just running upfield looking for sacks. So he was not as good against the run. So I do think that is fair if Verse can help them in that. I do think, and listen, I'm not trying to crap on Myles. I'm truly not. But he wasn't the perfect player. There are areas of the game where, maybe Verse can be a little bit better. Now, he's not going to be the same player Myles was as a pass rusher. There's no question about that. I don't think anybody's fooling themselves on that. I just think it was more alignment in terms of age, in terms of contention window, and in terms of just being honest about where they were. So I thought it was a great trade. So are people getting carried away on Verse? I mean, it's July. What do you expect? People are looking for some sort of glimmer of optimism with this team.
So Fred, it's reasonably fair. I'm still not a fan of trading one of the best players in the league, and I thought you could have got some more. ESPN did their positional rankings. Top 10 edge rushers, Myles Garrett, unanimous number 1 as the best edge rusher in football. Jared Verse was basically 11th. They did the top 10 and then honorable mention, and Verse was honorable mention. AFC executive, I thought he improved his second year with better pass rush plan, setup moves, and better timing. He's been a Pro Bowler both of his first 2 years, and he is ascending, and he's basically 11th. So he's a really good player.
Yeah, obviously it would have cost you a first-round pick to acquire a guy like that, and I understand why they did it. I agree with what Jason Lloyd said there. I just felt, again, the timing that you had to do it that day. You get into a bidding war. Maybe there was no other player than Jared Verse that they wanted, but it just seemed like the timing, you get competition for anything. I think the bid could have went up. Maybe you got 2 first-round picks plus the player. I don't know, but it just seemed like, as far as this year, I still don't know how you feel the team's better, even if Verse plays real well. He's not going to play as well as Myles Garrett did, in my opinion. So that's where it is. It is what it is. I think the alignment, they were, but it just seems like if you thought you could win the division with a new head coach in Baltimore and a new head coach in Pittsburgh, maybe you see how the season goes before you move on from your best player. But it is what it is. Verse, I think he is ascending. I wouldn't be surprised if he's voted a captain on this team. So, I mean, we'll see. I do like what I saw in his leadership already, out on the field, even though it was off-season program. And so, I could be surprised. I think he's a real good player. And, maybe the Browns couldn't have got any better.
All right, so same thing that the NFL executives, coaches, and scouts ranked the top 10 cornerbacks. ESPN again did this survey. Patrick Surtain from the Broncos, the second, was first. Darryl Stingley Jr. was second. Christian Gonzalez third. Quinyon Mitchell from the Eagles was sixth. Denzel Ward was seventh. If Ward played in Kansas City, New England, he'd be the talk of the NFL. He doesn't get credit. He should. Twitch or closing speed, there's no one better. Closes faster than anyone I've ever seen in coverage. He is that is a special trait. Do you think is Denzel Ward getting overlooked? Is ranked as the seventh cornerback, do you think?
I think so. I said on a podcast I'm on each week, Off the Leash, that I feel that if he was playing on a perennial playoff team, like Kansas City or wherever, he's just not getting the exposure. I don't know for sure. It seemed like last year, I don't know if the Browns run any primetime games other than the obligatory one. This year, they're scheduled for one, I think a Thursday night game with the Steelers. And so when you're just not seen around the country, plus you look at the numbers, I think 1 interception, 2 interceptions, they're not throwing his way. About the only time I can remember they threw his way last year, and it was unexplainable to me, Aaron Rodgers at the end of that Steelers game kept throwing in the end zone against Denzel Ward, and he kept knocking it down. But, if you don't have interceptions or you don't have the notoriety of playing in the playoffs and being seen over and over, then it goes against you. Plus, he's 29, but he's 29. He's made the Pro Bowl 5 times. Teams don't throw his way. That's why he doesn't have the interceptions. He doesn't have the numbers, but I think that's a good thing. His opponents know that. And, I do think he's overlooked a little bit, primarily for playing for the Browns.
Fred, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Fred.
All right, Dave. Thanks for having me on.
Fred Greetham, make sure you check him out. He is the senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. We're going to take a quick time out. We turn our attention to the Cavaliers. Sam Amico, hoopswire.com, Full Court Cleveland. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
You got so much to do. It's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day. 'Cause it's fun all over the state. So come on. Great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
We turn our attention to the Cavaliers. Donovan Mitchell has reportedly agreed to a 4-year, $273 million maximum contract extension that includes a player option for 2030 and 2031, that season, as well as a full trade kicker. ESPN's national NBA analyst Brian Windhorst with his thoughts on Mitchell re-signing with the Cavs.
It's a huge thing for the Cavs to get Donovan locked up. It was not something that was guaranteed at all. We talked about it at length at the end of the season, how it made financial sense for Donovan to wait, and that if he waited, that it wasn't necessarily a referendum on the Cavs organization, but that if he waited, the Cavs also had to protect themselves going forward. Not that they would trade him or anything, but I felt that they would have to be very careful trading Evan Mobley because, he may have to be your franchise player if things don't work out in a year. And so Donovan backing up everything he's ever said by signing this extension right now is, it's a seminal moment in the history of the franchise.
Welcome in Sam Amico, hoopswire.com co-host of Full Court Cleveland. Sam Mitchell could have made, I think it's $80 million more if he waited to do it. He signs early. What are your thoughts? What does it mean?
Yeah, I think that's a win-win for both. As Brian Windhorst just alluded to, you wait till next year, which would have made sense a little bit for Donovan, if not he had 80 million reasons to wait. But that really ends that narrative that we would have been listening to all season of could they potentially, we'd hear that narrative of Donovan Mitchell potentially leave. We hear that all the time. Heard it last time when he was eligible to sign an extension. Oh, he's going to the Knicks. He's going to go to the Heat. And we would have had to hear that all year. But Donovan has repeatedly said over and over and over, I'm staying here. My long-term plan is to stay here. And the fact that he kind of answered that question early just really puts the Cavs at ease and helps them continue to build around him as opposed to wondering what comes next.
Well, everybody's waiting to find out where is LeBron James going to play next season. You wrote an article about Donovan Mitchell and James. Take us through that and your thoughts on it.
Yeah, Donovan Mitchell just is basically would embrace a LeBron return, as I think obviously everybody in the Cavs organization would, but you have your guy who's your 1A star on the team. Sometimes those guys are like, hey, I'm the face of this franchise now, and that's not Donovan Mitchell. He's the opposite of that. It's, I want to win. I believe LeBron James would help us do that. And even though LeBron James, even if he's not the top or first or second option on offense, he's still going to be the face of the franchise when he comes back, if he comes back. And, Donovan Mitchell clearly embracing that. They just, I think everybody's kind of waiting on that before, especially the Cavs, before they really let the other dominoes fall around the roster.
All right, so ESPN's Bobby Marks, a former front office type, talked about LeBron James and his fit with the Cavs.
If you're just looking purely basketball, right, and I know you take certainly the Cleveland part into it as far as them drafting him and already winning a championship, I think Cleveland probably has the best fit when you look at their roster, ready-made roster here. And I think all the teams have compelling arguments, but I just think when you have Mitchell and Harden and Mobley and Allen, and then you have the shooters with Merrill and Max, and then and Jalen Tyson's still there, of course, and you've got maybe some other things you could do. I think that's probably the most ideal spot here. But as I said, Miami has a compelling case, and I think Philadelphia certainly does now. Not as high on the Golden State fit as probably some other people, just because I think there's so much work to do with that roster here. But we'll see. We'll see what LeBron wants to do.
So, Sam, two things. How do you think he fits in, and what are you hearing relative to his free agency?
I think he's the perfect fit. They've been trying to fill that kind of small forward number 3 role since he left 8 years ago without really a consistent starter there. They've had Dean Wade, they've had Max Strus. Max Strus was kind of your regular guy there before his injury last year, and Dean Wade took that spot. And then, of course, Jalen Tyson obviously had Isaac Okoro in that role for a while. They just haven't found the perfect fit for a full-time starter in that role. That would be LeBron, for next season anyway. I watched him with the Lakers this past year, perfectly fine with being the number 3 option. There were times I watched them and I thought LeBron needs to shoot more. He's distributing too much. But, then the playoffs came and Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves were out. That helped. LeBron showed in the playoffs, so yeah, I can still be the guy if I need to be. So he'd just be the perfect fit on the roster for all the reasons Bobby Marks said and more. As far as what I'm hearing, it's what the rest of everybody else is hearing, which is a whole lot of nothing other than, apparently LeBron hasn't talked to a single team yet, and he doesn't plan to. Rich Paul hasn't talked to a single team. Right now, it seems like these are all one-way conversations with the teams calling Rich Paul. And, I think everything we're hearing is, to me, it almost sounds like LeBron has made his mind up, and he probably made it up when he informed the Lakers. That's the vibes I'm getting. So, this is all kind of, I think, theatrics a little bit, maybe. Which is fine. We all jump on the bandwagon for this LeBron watch 2026. But if I had to take a wild guess, a strong feeling that he already knew when he told the Lakers a couple of weeks ago where he was going next.
So you wrote an article about Jonathan Kuminga. How would he fit, and how would he fit along, assuming, hoping, or whatever, that LeBron signs here?
All right, just add obvious depth at that spot. But the thing about Kuminga is he can play power forward. He could play. You could use him at small forward. You could use him at times at shooting guard. He's very versatile in that way. He works out in Cleveland. His agent Aaron Turner is from Orange, Ohio. He brings his clients here over the summer. Kuminga will work out in Cuyahoga County quite a bit in the off season. I know he would love to play for the Cavs. They would have to, it would have to be a sign and trade situation because they couldn't fit him into a salary slot. I don't think even if LeBron doesn't return. But listen, he's a versatile scorer. The one thing I don't care for about Kuminga is it always seems like something weird's going on. He had those issues with the Warriors, and you have to wonder why the Hawks didn't pick up his option. I think a return to Atlanta is there for him. The Lakers are certainly interested, but the Cavs are certainly in the mix for Jonathan Kuminga. And if he were to come, you'd have to figure out some things. Who do you sign and trade? Where does Jalen Tyson fit in? Is Kuminga really long-term project better than Jalen Tyson? I don't know. That's something the Cavs would have to decide. But, you can never have too much talent in the NBA. So if it were to work out where they wanted him and were able to get him, I'm sure they would figure that out.
Assuming that LeBron does sign with the Cavs, how does that affect the way they play, the style of play? I can't imagine you're going to be going up and down the court if you got a 42-year-old, small forward. But there are things that he brings that, counteract that.
They become, Dave, they're probably not going to push the pace a ton because you talk about LeBron James being 42 and probably kind of your point forward. But with James Harden getting up there, I don't think this is a team that's going to push it a ton. But that would be okay because theoretically you become that much more dangerous in the half-court offense. LeBron being, we talk about all the dynamics and the dunks and the, great plays he's made in his career. One thing we forget to mention is he is one of the all-time great facilitators, and he remains that way today, particularly in the half-court offense. He will find the open man. And I think James Harden, when he's not turning the ball over, does a really good job of that too. But I also think LeBron helps to unleash and unlock the Evan Mobleys of the world, the Jared Allens. Jared Allen already coming off a career year. So I think he just adds that element to your half-court offense that may have been lacking a little bit. He's an extra guy who's one of the all-time great facilitators to your offense, and that part of your game never goes away. You lose some speed and athleticism, but you don't really lose the smarts. And LeBron would certainly bring that, as well as a guy who gets them out of pickles at crunch time a lot, an extra guy to do that. So that's where his benefit would really come in. Is he's not going to be the 30-point scorer, but he would be the guy who would, veteran leader who's been there, who keeps things moving, keeps the ball moving. And I think they become 5 times more efficient in the half-court offense.
All right, before I let you go, I keep coming back to this when I think about LeBron coming back here. I think that is how you might be able to unlock Evan Mobley's potential. I think he's a guy that is just dying for somebody to say, this is how you need to do this.
Right. LeBron acts as a coach on the floor almost, and he'd be, not to mention one of the all-time greats, but it goes back to his ability to facilitate and coach and lead. And he brings that winner's edge. He's going to tell Evan Mobley, get in your spot here, or he's going to tell Evan Mobley, you know what, go over there, take your shot. That's where you're going to be the best spot you can be. So Evan's already one of the elite defenders, one of the elite rim protectors in the NBA. I think the addition of LeBron would really, really go a long way in helping Evan take that next step offensively. Not to mention help, Jared Allen, Donovan Mitchell, James Harden, Jalen Tyson. Everybody would benefit from his know-how and, his ability to find ways to win.
Sam Amico, is always great stuff. Appreciate you making some time for us. Thanks very much, Sam.
All right, thanks for having me. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. You can also catch him on Full Court Cleveland. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.